Hello, welcome to Talk of the Town. I'm your host, Jessa Jeremiah. What a fabulous show we've got for you today. I hope you stay tuned through the whole thing. We're going to cover a lot of communities surrounding the Madison area. Right now I'm going to introduce you to Big Radio. Now I've got owners Scott and Ben Thompson joining me today. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Jessa.
I'm excited to learn about what you do because there are 8 stations, and share with us where they are.
We have the original 2 radio stations. They're in Monroe. Then we have an additional 3 radio stations in Freeport, Illinois, and then 3 additional stations in Beloit and Janesville.
Wow. Now, this is a locally owned company. In fact, you're looking at the owners here. What do you think separates your radio stations, from other stations that are in your market?
Well, what we do is very similar to you at Channel 57, we do local programming. And we have 35 people working for us, local people who are on the air. We have morning shows, midday shows, afternoon shows. We also have news staff. 7 of the 35 are full-time news people that we have news staff 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And of course we do sports as well. We do about 400 high school games during the sports season. So we're out there. Of course, weather's important as well, but it's news, weather, sports. That's what we think about. That's why we think we're different than other radio stations. We do that on all 8 radio stations.
That's incredible. I think the ability to cover local content, that's something that obviously is near and dear to our hearts, but this is really a community that supports and embraces their local community. So to be able to provide that content to your listeners is incredible. I want to talk a little bit about the digital media movement, and something that, of course, we were talking before the break. We hear so much about digital, but radio is absolutely still so relevant. Talk to us about that.
Radio is definitely still relevant. 93% of the population still listens to radio on a weekly basis. And, most people listen close to 3 hours every single day. And that's mostly because radio is still number 1 in the car. And part of that is because of the local content that stations like ours put out on a regular basis. We have local DJs who are out in the community, and that's something that Pandora, Spotify, other digital options don't have. They don't have that connection to the local communities.
Yeah, well, you bet. And you've got a captive audience that is able to absorb some of that great local content. What a good time to do that when you're going to and from. Now, obviously, to keep a station running, or keep 8 stations rather running, your advertisers and sponsors are always greatly appreciated. What would you say is your value proposition to them?
So I think at Big Radio and most radio stations, we have 2 types of clients. We have listeners and we have advertisers. And I think when we're talking to our advertisers, we spend a lot of time talking about our listeners. And when you put out as much local content as we do, local, entertaining, and engaging content, we have a fiercely loyal listener base that we can then put our advertisers' message in front of and drive more business for our advertisers.
Very good. And big question for you next. What's the future of radio?
I think the future of radio is local, and it's much like what you do here at Channel 57. Local content that ties you into that community and creates a loyal bond between you and the community, and they will always be there for you then. Like we'll always be there for them. And I don't think radio will go anywhere. I think radio's future is strong because of that.
Well, and I think the other issue, Jess, is that anybody can play music. And I think a lot of the other radio stations that are out there try to do 15 songs an hour. We think what we do between the songs, because where we have our staff, we want them to be personalities on the radio. We think what they say between the songs is important. We think the news breaks are important. We think our local sports is important. We think our weather is important. It's what we do between the songs that we think is important.
Yeah, you bet. It sure is. Now, if you haven't picked up on the resemblance yet, this is father-son duo. Talk to us about that before we head to break.
Well, yeah, father-son. Ben was raised in the business. I bought the first 2 stations when he was about 5 or 6 years old. He was on the air as a 2nd or 3rd grader. He would come on the air on the radio as a kid with a riddle. So he would do a riddle with me in the morning on one of our morning shows. So he's been raised in the business. When he graduated from high school, he went to DePaul in Chicago, went to college there. Decided he majored in finance and accounting, went to a hedge fund in Chicago. And I think it was about, what, 4 years into his hedge fund. That's when I purchased the Janesville and Beloit stations and decided I had maybe bitten off more than I can chew, because I'm also a lawyer, an estate and trust lawyer in Monroe. So I thought we had a breakfast, I think it was in Janesville, and sat down and talked to you and said, if you wanna come in, great. If you don't, I'll be figuring out something else. And I think it's been, what, 3-4 years now that you've been back?
Yeah, yeah. And I've only had to threaten to go back to Chicago like 3 times. So,
It's always good to have that in your back pocket. You can do that, father or son. Well, I bet this combination knows a thing or two about local radio, and it's been a pleasure learning more. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Again, this is Scott and Ben Thompson with Big Radio, and this is Talk of the Town. We've got more after the break.